तब आप श्रीमुख कया भया पूरा तुम्हारा पन पशु फिकर ना करो पहुँचे वे मिलावे शयन पहुँचे मिलावे शयन बोलिए श्री धाम के धनी की जय. We talked about some of the prominent religious establishments in the city of Surat for the followers of Sri Krishna Pranami faith. We talked about Syamdasi's Mandir and the glory of his name. We talked about Nani Bichariji Mandir and how not just the humans but the deities also wish to get the transcendent understanding of Dharma. We also talked about Mool Milawa Manav Mandir and how that religious center is trying to serve humanity. We also talked about Lal Dasi's arrival to Surat and how he meets Prannathji. Those were the topics that we covered yesterday. As Lal Dasi arrives and meets Prannathji in Surat and tells him that he has a resolution to not break his fast until he gets to Naltanpuri and pays his respect to Bihariji. Prannathji says to Lal Dasi that his resolution has been fulfilled. He told him, "You do not have to go meet Bihariji." For a disciple, the greatest rule to follow is to follow the guidance of his spiritual master or his guru. If a disciple does not listen to his or her spiritual master or a guru, he is denied of the guru's understanding and guru's glory. Lal Dasi then decides that he would serve Prannathji and Sundar Shahji so long as he lived. From that moment on, from the year 1729, he accompanies and serves Prannathji as one of the closest associates, confidants, and disciples. As we've been talking about Prannathji's awakening, Prannathji's Jagani all around towns and cities, wherever he travels, people of different faiths come to his discourse. We talked about Hariji Vyas in Junagadh. We talked about Bhim Bhatta and Syam Bhatta in Surat. We talked about the leader of Kabir faith, Chintamani. Similarly, people of different faiths come in huge numbers to the discourse of Mahamati Prannathji because the glory of his teachings spread across towns whenever he gives discourse. Mahamati Prannathji often finds himself critical of those who call themselves spiritual and are absolutely engaged in rituals, caste systems, and traditions. Mahamati Prannathji reaches out to the followers of Vaishnava tradition and reminds them of the true devotion to God instead of ritualistic prayers, instead of a belief in caste system and older traditions. He reminds them that the glory of Vaishnava tradition should be the submergence in the love of Sri Krishna. As you might be aware that Vaishnavism, or Vaishnava tradition, is one of the major traditions of broader Hindu and Vedic culture. And unlike other Vedic traditions like Vedanta that we talked about the other day, Vaishnavas believe that the ultimate reality or the supreme God is personal. They understand that God, supreme, is Sri Krishna. and believe that all the living beings or all his souls are eternal beings. And the problems in life occur because of the soul's forgetfulness of his or her relationship to God. So in a way, it is relatable to that of Tartam's teaching. And they believe that by chanting the name of God, the soul can be awakened, live peacefully, and return to Vaikuntha. Vaikuntha meaning Bikuntha, a place of no anxiety. There are 4 main Vaishnava traditions, lineages all based in India originally, and they worship Lord Vishnu as the Lord Supreme. Some of them focus primarily on Lord Krishna, but they primarily worship Lord Vishnu, Lord Rama, and Lord Krishna as different manifestations of the same Supreme Lord, or one Supreme Divinity, although their styles of prayers and other things may differ. We'll talk about the events in Haridwar, the Kumbh Mela tradition, and we'll probably look into different types of Vaishnava traditions. But to recap a little bit, there are 4 primary Vaishnava traditions. 1, Madhava Sampradaya, led by or founded by Madhavacharya and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. There is another one called Ramanuja Sampradaya, which was propagated by Ramanujacharya. Another one is Vishnu Syam Sampradaya or Vallabha Sampradaya, led by Vishnu Swami and Vallabhacharya. And the 4th one is Nimmarka Sampradaya, led by Nimmark. So the Vaishnava gurus, the Vaishnava saints, and the followers of Vaishnava come to the teachings or the discourse of Mahamati Prannathji. And Mahamati Prannathji reminds them who the true Vaishnava is. Those Vaishnavas are so deeply engaged in rituals. They believe in caste systems, and primarily the Vaishnavas are of the higher caste or the Brahmanas. So Mahamati Prannathji reminds them the glory of Vallabhacharya, the founder of one of the Vaishnava traditions, and all those Vaishnava founders, including Madhavacharya, Vishnu Sam, Ramanujacharya, and Nimmark, and all those religious leaders, and what they truly intend Vaishnava followers be like. Mahamati Prannathji reminds them how a Vaishnava follower should lead his or her life. If you look into the book of Kirantan, Mahamati Prannathji defines and reminds Vaishnava as such. O bhai mere Vaishnava kahiye wako, O bhai mere Vaishnava kahiye wako, Nirmal jaki atma, Nirmal jaki atma, O bhai mere Vaishnava kahiye wako. A Vaishnava is the one, says Mahamati, whose heart and soul is pure, who doesn't engage in any act that goes against the teachings of the Vedas. They do not engage in those actions. And the Vaishnavas are the one who have an understanding of the Brahma. Nicha karma ki nikat na jave, jaye pehchana gaye Brahma. A Vaishnava is the one whose heart and soul is pure. He doesn't engage in any less than virtuous actions, and who has an understanding of the Brahma. Mahamati Prannathji further says, इश्क लगाए पियासों पूरा खेले अबला हुए हरिस इश्क लगाए पियासों पूरा खेले अबला हुए हरिस ओ अंधे अज्ञानी भरम में भूले अंधे अज्ञानी भरम में भूले परया ठोर प्रेम को रसो भाई मेरे वैष्णव कहिवा को. These Vaishnavas, says Mahamati, should be completely submitted, completely submerged in the love of the Lord Supreme. And they worship the Lord as the consorts. However, in this world, here they are completely opposite. They are submerged in Maya, in illusion, and the love of the Lord Supreme rather is completely opposite. It is full of love, full of eternal love. But these Vaishnavas are focused only into the world. Mahamati Prannathji thus reminds the Vaishnavas to be fully submerged in the love of Sri Krishna. Mahamati Prannathji is against only focusing on the outer look, the attire, the tilak, the wreath, the mala that surround their neck. He is against those who pretend to be spiritual. Mahamati Prannathji wants people, the followers of Vaishnava tradition, to be pure in heart, pure in their actions, pure in their thoughts as well, not just outwardly. It's such, Mahamati Prannathji says, Andara nahi nirmala, pira naha vivaya. They are not pure in the inside, and then they bath multiple times a day, and that does not work. Mahamati Prannathji talks to the followers of Vallabha tradition of Vaishnavism. A philosopher, Indian philosopher and religious scholar who founded Krishna-centered Pusti Marga set of Vaishnavism in India, who propagated non-dualism Vallabhacharya. And one of his teachings was that he was against, he rejected asceticism and monastic life in attaining God's grace, suggested that through loving devotion to Sri Krishna, any householder could achieve salvation or moksha. So he also talks to the people of Vallabhacharya tradition and reminds them of how glorious the teachings of Vallabhacharya are and where he finds them now. As Mahamati Prannathji says, Vachana vicharu re mithadi Vallabhacharya jabani artha liye bina ye andheri karata sabon ki fani. Vallabhacharya, the founder of Vallabha tradition, he unraveled the great teachings of Srimad Bhagavata. He reminded people of the true meaning of Dharma and the transcendent teachings. He reminds people to understand the depth of his teachings, and until they do, they would be pushed towards Maya, they would be pushed towards the world. Mahamati Prannathji says, for the matter that the true followers of Vallabhacharya realize the eternal happiness. I'm trying to convince you of what Vallabhacharya meant. Bani गाँव श्री वल्लभाचार्य ज्यों वैष्णव को सुख होए सत वचन तो बहुत न कहूँ जानो दुख पावे दुष्ट होए. But I don't want to reveal it all because those with ulterior motives would not be happy when I reveal the teachings of Vallabhacharya. Mahamati Prannathji says, the Vaishnavas dress very beautifully. They look like ascetics. They would have clean loin clothes. They would have wreath in their hands. They would chant the name of God. However, fact of the matter is, he says, the most important thing is to know who you are and where you came from. कौन तुम और कहाँ से आए और कहाँ है तुम्हारा घर. ये कौन भूम और कहाँ श्री कृष्ण जी पाओगे कौन है. वचन विचारो मीठड़ी वल्लभाचार्य जवानी. Mahamati Prannathji reminds the Vaishnavas that you may dress beautifully, you may take showers multiple times a day, but until you know Sri Krishna well, until you know where you came from and who you are and where your original abode is, then you would still be lost. That is why Mahamati Prannathji says a true Vaishnava is the one who has control over 9 sense organs. जो वैष्णव वश करे नवांग सो वैष्णव क्यों न सदा, says Mahamati. Vaishnava is not the follower of Lord Vishnu. Vaishnava is the one who has self-control over the desires of the sense organs. Your eyes, ear, tongue, skin, and your hands, legs, 9 sense organs that sense and receive the recognition of what's happening around us. So Mahamati Prannathji reminds the followers of Vaishnava traditions in Surat. And Mahamati Prannathji reminds them of what a Vaishnava should be like. He says, a true Vaishnava is the one who understands the pain of others. As Mahatma Gandhi used to sing, Vaishnava jana to tene kahiye jo peeda parai jaane de. The Vaishnava is the one who understands others' pain. Mahamati Prannathji continues to remind them that the outward cleaning does not purify one's soul. While physical purity is critical as well, it is only conducive to one's spiritual growth towards self-realization when the mind is pure. The purity of words, thoughts, and actions in harmony, in sync, can only help one realize the divinity within. The water purifies the body. The words of scriptures purify the mind. The understanding of the scriptures purify the wisdom, and the meditation of the Lord Supreme and His abode purifies the soul. So Mahamati Prannathji does not just focus in outward beautification, outward cleaning of the body, but the deepmost purification of soul. So he wants everything in sync. The body, mind, actions, thoughts, the purification of all those things. So Mahamati Prannathji awakens few Vaishnava followers as well. And if you look at today, there are few Vaishnava traditions that have gained a lot of attention of Western audience as well. One of them is Gaudiya Vaishnavism, propagated by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. International Society for Krishna Consciousness, as you might be aware of that sect. There are so many temples of ISKCON, International Society for Krishna Consciousness, the concept propagated by Srila Prabhupada. And they are one of the Vaishnava traditions. And they chant Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. That is their divine mantra. And that is one of the Vaishnava traditions. Kripaluji Maharaj, another Krishna movement, Krishna Bhakti movement. His teachings are recognized around the world as well. Probably not as much as ISKCON, but they are also recognized around the world. And he talked about the glory of Golokiya Sri Krishna, the glory of Radharani in attaining Sri Krishna. But Mahamati Prannathji's teachings in regards to Lord Sri Krishna is a little different, as we already said. They talk about the incarnation of Lord Vishnu as the Lord Supreme. But Tartam discriminates between the three divine Leelas and three divine forms of Sri Krishna. One is the incarnation of Vishnu, who comes in every Dwapara Yuga. And we say it, in this universe alone, in this Brahmanda alone, in this creation alone, that incarnation had come to this world for more than 10.82 million times. So we are talking about that Sri Krishna, the Lord Supreme, Aksharatit Sri Krishna, who came into this world for the first time in the 28th Dwapar Yuga of Lord Brahmaji's 51st year and the first day of his life. So there are distinctions, yet these Vaishnava traditions are glorified around the world, and the glory of Tartam, the glory of Prannathji is nowhere to be found. That is the reason why we need to take the lead, we need to take the initiative to spread the teachings of Tartam, the devotion within it, the Krishna Bhakti within it, the transcendent understanding within it. And Mahamati Prannathji is doing exactly the same in around the year 1730 as he decides to leave Surat towards Delhi. One day, Prannathji asked Sundar Satji if any of them would want to accompany him to travel around the places, awakening souls. He said, "Who is ready to go with me?" He reminds them before they would agree or disagree that it won't be an easy journey, that the comforts of the world will not be available to them. They may have to starve, they may not have enough food to eat, they may not have a place to stay, and may have to face difficult times during this journey of awakening, Sundar Satji. But he said, despite the challenges, please let me know who is willing to go with me to propagate the teachings of Satguru Sri Devchandraji Maharaj. It is believed that more than 500 Sundar Sats accompanied Mahamati Prannathji in this journey of awakening from Surat. Baiju Maharani, the divine companion of Prannathji, Govardhan Bhatta, Bhim Bhatta, Syam Bhatta, Nagji Bhai, Dhara Bhai, we heard the story of Dhara Bhai from Kambalia, Kanji Bhai, who rescued Mahamati Prannathji from the jail of Ahmedabad, Laldasi, and numerous other Sundar Sats were ready to accompany him. लाल दास संग चले खाली लेकर हाथ निवाही आकर लो चले श्री राज के साथ. Lal Dasi had nothing with him. He had been bankrupt as all his ships had drowned in the typhoon, so he didn't have anything. Yet he had the utmost submission and devotion, and he was willing to do anything to be with Sri Prannathji. And all these Sundarsaji, more than 500 Sundarsaji, accompanied Prannathji in this journey of awakening. Mahamati Prannathji leaves the city of Surat and gets to Ahmedabad in 4 days, and from there on he travels to Sidhapur, one of the pilgrimage sites in India for Hindus, and that is where one of the holy lakes, Bindu Sarovar, is located. There are 4 sarovars, or 4 divine lakes believed to be in Hinduism in India. Bindu Sarovar is in Sidhapur, Narayan Sarovar in Kutch, Man Sarovar is in the Kailas in the north, and Pampa Sarovar in the south. And from Sidhapur, Mahamati Prannathji heads towards Palanpur and eventually arrives in Delhi. While Mahamati Prannathji stays in Sidhapur for 22 days, a man named Bhagwan Revadas serves Prannathji and all the Sundarsaji really well. And before Prannathji leaves, he rewards him with some coins. Bhagwan Revadas becomes greedy and he follows him, such that he thinks if Prannathji gave him some coins, if all of these 500 Sundarsats, 500 of his followers give him something, then he would not have to work anymore. Govardhan Bhatta criticizes him for his greed and avarice, and rather asks him to anticipate not the material wealth, but the wealth of the beyond, the divine wealth, the divine understanding, the transcendent understanding. Govardhan Bhatta reminds him that Prannathji is a divine personality and an enlightened divine soul. And what you are expecting is a few coins from him? Why don't you receive the transcendent understanding and awaken your soul? Says Govardhan Bhatta, criticizing Bhagwan Revadas. तब अर्ज करी भगवान ने लगा दो कदम पर आत्म पहचान के जगाओ मेरे आत्मा. He feels ashamed of himself and his greed and stupidity. He grabs the lotus feet of Prannathji and asks him to bless him with the transcendent understanding of Atman and awaken his soul. Then Mahamati Prannathji gives him 4 words to remember, to memorize, and to chant. Taba char sukana chalate kahe याद करो निज धाम जमुना ताल घातकी और अक्षर मुकाम ब्रज रास में हम थे भी तीसरे इत अब खेल देख पीछे फिरे जाए लगे हम तित. Mahamati Prannathji asked him to chant these 4 words. He reminds him of Paramdham. He asked him to visualize the river Yamuna, Satguru, the abode of Akshara Brahma, and all the divine features of the Lord's abode Paramdham. Mahamati Prannathji asked him to reflect on Braja, Ras, and this 3rd world of awakening. So he basically told him 4 words to remember. He gave him 4 words to chant: Paramdham, Braja, Ras, and Jagan. Mahamati Prannathji says, साथजी जाके सुनके शब्द आखर धनी के कहलाए में कहे तुमको चार शब्द किन ज्यादा किन कम ले किन कर डाले रत. If you look deeper into the teachings of Mahamati Prannathji, it revolves around these four words. These four words are the themes of his revelations. Having a clear understanding of these words and reflection on these, that is all that the soul requires in realizing the Lord Supreme Sri Krishna. Paramdham, Braja, Ras, and Jagani. Many people today involved too deeply and are worried about the rituals. They care about the do's and the don'ts. Oh, what I should do. Should I eat this food or not? Should I go to that temple or not? Should I do the arati sitting or standing? Should I do the arati from the left or the right? Should I circumambulate the temple of God from the left or the right? Should I dress this way or should I dress that way? Should I shave my beard or keep it? Should I cover my face or not? There are a lot of do's and don'ts. There are so many guidelines, so many religious, ritualistic themes that many religions preach. Compared to that, Prannathji says, you do not have to worry about any of those things. For that matter, I would say Prannathji's philosophy is one of the easiest. Prannathji, the faith Mahamati Prannathji and Satguru Shree Devchandraji propagated, is one of the easiest to follow. The one with highest clarity on what a soul needs to do in attaining moksha or salvation. These are four words. That is all that you need to know. Paramdham, Braja, Ras, and Jagani. If you know the theme around these four words, you find a way to God. You find a way to Rats. So you don't have to memorize anything. Paramdham, Braja, Ras, and Jagani. We were in Paramdham, or we are in Paramdham currently in our divine form. We asked for a game of suffering because we saw Akshar Brahma today. We were unaware of Raji's glory and we could not fully experience the love of Sri Raji in Paramdham. And Raji Maharaj did not want that to remain in limbo. He wanted the souls, the consorts, to experience the love of Paramdham to its fullest. And he wanted soul to realize the glory of Sri Raji Maharaj. Ek Patsahi Arasaki Duza Vahidattaki Sakka. Those two things. So Raji Maharaj decided that the soul, the consorts, be given a chance to see Akshar Brahma today, and that's what happened in the morning today in Paramdham at 9 o'clock. Just like every day, Akshar Brahma came for our darshana, for the darshan of Sri Raji, and then we saw Akshar Brahma. We wanted to know him. We wanted Raji Maharaj to tell us what he does and everything. And Raji Maharaj was hesitant initially to disclose anything about him, but as we insisted, he told us about him in details, what he does, and we wanted to be a part of his game. We wanted to be a part of his world that he creates. And as we desired, as we insisted, we came to Braja. In Braja, Raji Maharaj was with us in the form of Sri Krishna, but we were forgetful of our true identity, as Raji Maharaj had said in Paramdham. We were deeply engaged in the works of mind. We were in the world. We were engaged in our family affairs. We had kids, we had cows, and that was Braja. Yet, Sri Krishna was always in our minds and hearts. All we did, everything that we did revolved around Sri Krishna. Paramdham to Braja, and from Braja to Ras. And we talked about the eternal Ras Leela, how Sri Krishna played the flute after 52 days of separation, that the cowmaids or the gopiya or us, to be honest, to be exact, experienced. And after 52 days, Sri Krishna played the flute, and on the night of full moon, we got to Vrindavan, the eternal Vrindavan, not the one in India, but the eternal Vrindavan, and had a divine experience of Ras Leela with him. And after Ras Leela was completed, the Raji Maharaj or Sri Krishna asked us what we wanted, and we said in unified voice that we did not want to experience that separation anymore. The separation was unbearable, so we told him we want to return to our original abode. Have bala hu etala magu have bala hu etala magu khine ka lagana thaye jiha amne brahanahi chalote rajaye. And then we attained the glorious abode of Paramdham. But since the desire of some of the souls to witness the game of suffering, the game of forgetfulness, was not totally fulfilled, we found ourselves in the third world, this world of awakening called Jaganiku Brahmanda. So these are the four words, Paramdham, Braja, Ras, Jagani. And in this world of awakening, Raji Maharaj revealed the transcendent understanding. He gave us the understanding of Braja, he gave us the understanding of Paramdham, he gave the understanding of Ras. He gave us an understanding of why this world was created in the first place, and he gave us an understanding of how we can find the lost glory and how we can realize our divine reality. So as long as we remember these four words, that is all the soul requires. Mahamati Prannathji says, we are in Paramdham, in our divine form. But in the meantime, we are here in this world with our material existence. And the goal is to awaken ourselves and remove the veil of forgetfulness with the transcendent understanding in the name of Dharma. And when we do that, what happens is we grieve for Raji's absence in our life. We crave for his grace and his presence. And as we all might be aware that he is omniscient, he knows everything, all of our feelings. As Mahamati says, if we call him with utmost sincerity, urgency, and a grief of separation, he makes himself available to us. So there are no other spiritual guidances or ritualistic guidance of what a soul should do. Mahamati Prannathji talks about the feeling of a soul in the book of Kiranti. When such a feeling comes, when the relationship between a soul and Lord is established, the soul desires nothing but cries for his glimpse, his words. And such soul is known as Birahin, a bereaved soul, a soul that is grieving the absence of the Lord. The word is Birahin. As Mahamati Prannathji says, Na baitha sake birahani soe sake na roe. A soul that is bereaving the absence of Lord cannot cry, he cannot sleep. Because she cries all day, so she doesn't have any tears to shed. And she cannot sleep, she becomes restless. बिरहागत रे जाने सोई बिरहागत रे जाने सोई जो मिलके बिछुड़ी हो जुमीन जल थे बिछुड़ी जुमीन बिछुड़ी जल थे यागत जाने सो मेरे दुल्हा मेरे दुल्हा. So the situation, the state of a soul that grieves the absence of the Lord, is just like a fish that is out of water. It is restless. It craves nothing but return to water. The sweet honey does not satisfy it. The milk doesn't satisfy it. It wants nothing but water. Similarly, a soul grieving the absence of Lord does nothing but cries to be one with the Lord Supreme. That is why if you look into the teachings of Mahamati Prannathji, there are not that many ritualistic prescriptions. Mahamati Prannathji doesn't say what you should do and what you should not. He doesn't have any recommendations for rituals, what you should do when a child is born. Mahamati Prannathji doesn't have time to explain who you should marry and who you should not. He doesn't say how you should pray and how you should not. He doesn't say how you should grieve the loss of your parents or your family members, because a soul that finds herself in this world away from the divine, away from her Lord, does not care anything about this world. All she cares about is to be one with the Lord. It is stated that a hurt child is held closest to the mother's chest. When we cry for help, when we cry for his absence, when we bereave and grieve on his absence, shed tears for his presence and urge him from the core of our heart for his grace. Prannathji Maharaj is easily available to that soul. As Mahamati Prannathji says, Raji Maharaj affirms the idea that he always listens to the pleas of his souls. Tehki ka araj pahunchata hai jo bhejiye paak de. When we send our prayers and our thoughts and our urges to Sri Raji Maharaj that are coming out of sincerity, then he definitely listens to them. As Raji Maharaj also says, Tu saji kara ek bhera, to me ji karun das abera. Call me once with tears in your eyes, and that is all I need. If you really, really need me, I'm always available. So Mahamati Prannathji's teachings is simplest, is one of the most clear. It is one with the highest clarity. All you have to do is the constant remembrance of Sri Raji. That is all it takes for a soul to realize its eternal glory. Mahamati Prannathji in the chapter 11 of the book of Kalas Grantha talks about the attributes of such souls. Suhagyaniyon ke lakshan, the characteristic of Lord's consorts. It says, Chinmay खेले छिन में हंसे छिन में गावे गीत छिन रोवे शुदना रहे यही सुहागिन की. Sometimes they experience as if they are playing with Sri Raji Maharaj. They are the part of Raji's Leelas. In the same time, she would glorify his name. In the same time, the next time, right away, right next, she would cry and she would be forgetful of everything. She does not have the control over the state of her mind. She just lost, she just submerged in the glory of Sri Raji Maharaj, in the glory of Sri Krishna. She is always focused in finding him and reaching out to him. She does not think about others. She doesn't think about the world. She doesn't care about what world thinks of her. We know what Mirabai did. These are the consorts of the Lord Supreme. So they would not care about the world. Even if they are forgetful of the world, their mind is always directed towards the Lord in finding him. Rehebe nirguna hoeki aharabe nirguna sapadila suhagani kavahana. They never hurt others' feelings. They are always pure in mind, pure in thought, pure in actions. Such are the Suhaganis, such are the true Sundar Sats, says Mahamati. And for them, nothing matters. That is the reason why, if you look into the book of Dharma and the revelations of Mahamati Prannathji, you do not find many do's and don'ts. The only thing Mahamati Prannathji does is forbids Sundar Sats from taking those 5 things, as we already talked about. He is against smoking, he is against non-vegetarian diet, he is against stealing, he is against extramarital affairs, and he is against different kinds of addictions. Other than that, he does not have any conditions. He does not have any restrictions to be one with the Lord Supreme. Dear Sundar Shahji, we've been so fortunate, so lucky. And we probably have the highest providence to be awakened by this teaching of Dharma, because, like I said earlier, it is one of the simplest and the one with highest clarity in terms of attaining salvation and moksha. Look at Quran, for example. As Quran says, it is God's will. If He wants to take you to heaven, then you get to heaven. But it's again dependent upon the will of God. Jesus convinces people that He would come again, and those with virtuous actions would probably be given the eternal abode of the Lord, Supreme Heaven. They would get to heaven. But when that happens is anybody's guess. Mahamati Prannathji says, Ittahi baithe gara jagiye dham purana mananta bhavisha vatam. You can be awakened in this life alone, and you will experience the glory of Paramdham. Dear Sundar Shahji, there could be no other glorious thing than this understanding, and you could not be any luckier than receiving this transcendent understanding. Bhagwan Revadas continues to chant these words, Paramdham, Braj, Ras, Jagini, Paramdham, Braj, Ras, Jagini, Paramdham, Braj, Ras, Jagini. It is said that he chants these 4 words for 6 months. He takes a vow of silence. He doesn't talk to anyone, but recites these 4 words. He takes the Maun Vrat. And after 6 months of chanting these glorious words, he receives some divine powers. All his body becomes brighter, lighter, and everyone that sees him begins to be surprised by the changes in him. And People want to know the secret. One of the local Hindu priests comes to Bhagwan Revadas. His name is Kesav Bhatta, and he inquires him about how the changes come about. He said, a Kshatriya saint came with a group of people, group of his followers, and he asked me to chant the words. Kesav Bhatta. One of the souls from Paramdham realized that Revadas was so mistaken because he was unaware of his divinity and glory. He was the Lord Supreme, you consider him a Kshatriya. यह तो अक्षरातीत था, तुम ना करी पहचान, अब मैं उतही जाता हूँ, मुझे आया ईमान. He was the Lord Supreme Aksharatit, and you thought of him as an ordinary human being, an ordinary saint, ordinary sadhu. Kesav Bhatta realizes that it was a time for him to find Prannathji. He left Sidhapur and he said, until I meet him, I will be restless and not be at peace. It is believed that at the time he left his home, he only had a blanket and a vessel, open vessel with a handle and a spout for pouring. We call it lota, to pour water. He had a lota in a blanket. He left his home and he reached Delhi in 4 months, and that is where he found Prannathji. He went around looking for him, asked people of his glories. Someone, have you seen someone, a saint who would talk about Paramdham and these concepts? Paramdham, Braja, Ras and Jagan. He kept around, he looked around, he kept searching for him, and in 4 months he gets to Delhi and meets Prannathji. Dear Sundarshaji, when a soul is awakened, it overwhelms the desires of the senses. The world becomes meaningless and of no value. As soon as Kesav Bhatta gets to Delhi and meets Prannathji, he receives the Tartha mantra and awakens his soul. And as he is awakened, and Prannathji teaches him the revelations of Paramdham, Braja, Ras and Jagani, enlightens him with the transcendent understanding, he returns home and awakens Bhagwan Revadas himself. He could not be awakened by Prannathji, but he was awakened by Kesav Bhatta. So awakening can happen at the hands of anyone. It does not have to be a Acharya Shree or someone of a higher stature. It can be anyone who can convince you of the teachings, whom your heart connects with. He establishes a temple in his own home and awakens numbers of Sundarsats. His home itself becomes a temple of Sri Rats. The day your home becomes the temple, its residents become the consorts of the Lord Supreme. That is what we need to have at our homes. We say that Raji is in our heart, is in our home, but we do not experience His eternal presence in our lives. And as such, we have fightings, we quarrel at home, and our home does not feel homely. But here, Kesav Bhatta established the temple of Sri Raj. And if you look into Beetak, the biography written by Lal Das, the glory of Kesav Das is sung very beautifully. His legacy is set. And he is the one who compiles the revelations of Mahamati Prannathji into these 14 books. The act we know as Jilda Vadna. He compiles the revelations scattered in different places and he compiles them into one book. Ras, Prakash, Satritu, Kalas, all these 14 books. Mahamati Prannathji leaves Sidhapur and arrives in the city of Mirta. It is the city of Mirabai. As you might all be aware of Mirabai, one of the very well-known devotees of Sri Krishna. But before Mahamati Prannathji enters, there is a monk who believes in miracles called Lavanandayati. And he sets a rule because he has scores of followers. People are fearful of him because he can perform miracles. And he has set a rule. Those saints and sages who want to come to Mirta would have to beat him in a spiritual debate. If not, they would be expelled or they would not be allowed into the city of Mirta. On tomorrow's discourse, we'll talk about Mahamati Prannathji's debate with Lavanandayati and how he beats him, the awakening of numbers of Sundar Satji, including Rajaram Bhai and Janjan Bhai, the awakening of Lalita Sakhi, the establishment of a temple in city of Mirta, and a different kind of understanding that he never had. That set the course of Mahamati Prannathji's teachings. That is, his finding that the Vedas and the Quran are basically saying the same thing. The idea of religious harmony and interfaith understanding, the seed of such understanding was sowed in the city of Mirta. As he heard from the mosque the words La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah, he realizes that the Bhagavad Gita's description of three Purushas, three divine entities, and the revelation of Quran are the same. And Mahamati Prannathji from that moment on started looking into all different kinds of scriptures and finds out that the philosophical theme, the deepest, most teachings or revelations of the scriptures are basically the same. Dear Sundar Shahji, the story of Mirta will be discussed tomorrow. So thank you all for being with us. We talked about Vaishnava traditions and how Mahamati Prannathji reminds people of how a true Vaishnava should be like, awakening of Bhagwan Revadas and story around him, and the story of Kesabhatta. So thank you all so much, and with this, we'll conclude the discourse for the day. Pranamji.